Do I have a butter
We
churn?
did, sure did. I churned.
You churned?
Yeah.
How long would it take you?
Oh, if you developed a sort of an art for how to slap the milk in like 30, 40 minutes.
Okay.
Talking about the sausage, my mother would, we would stuff the sausage, and our home didn't have ceiling overhead, so it had just the joist and rafters on the sides, and she would hang those sausage from this joist over the stove, and there was a wood-fired stove, and we made good use of those sausage all winter.
We had a smokehouse. Did you have a smokehouse?
We did not. We had neighbors who had smokehouses, but Daddy did not. Some of the neighbors would smoke meat. My mother didn't particularly like smoked meat. She liked it as fresh.
And that's why she kept it over the stove.
Yeah, and then we would have a large wood box. I guess like 5 by 5, maybe 4 feet deep, and we would salt away meat for the winter, like shoulders and hams, and you put a heavy layer of salt, and then meat, then the heavy layer of salt, and just come on up to keep the meat. And you would select a cold day, a very cold morning, to do the killing, and if you got 1 or 2 real cold nights, you didn't have to worry about keeping the meat. And Daddy had the meat box in the back porch of the home, and and he would have a cover over it, of course, and my mother would go in there and push back the cover to cut meat and
cut some off and go in and
cut it. It was good.
Oh yes, I can smell it now. We had gardens, and so we would bank white potatoes and sweet potatoes, and some people had a root cellar, or the house was raised on rocks or stilts.
Some of them did. We did not have a root cellar. Daddy would put the potatoes in a bank, and you would start with a layer of pine straw and put a layer of potatoes and a layer of pine straw, come right on up, and then he would stack corn stalks up at an angle to the top, and just build it right on up like that, and then across the top he would put some type of cover, like a tub or something, and he would have maybe 6 or 8 of those potato banks, and then when winter set in, my mother would go into the first bank, and you'd dig out a little hole in the corn stalks, and then chunk back, when you got what you wanted, chunk back the pine straw to keep the potatoes, and they would keep. This was sweet potatoes.
Right.
Now Irish potatoes, we usually, my mother liked the red potatoes, and she would, Daddy would have a place in one of the barns and just lay them out, just touching each other, and they would keep in that barn like that.
Now that's the first I've heard of that technique.
I tell you also, when I was, after I got into high school, our school would have projects and grow sweet potatoes and Irish potatoes, and we would go under the school building. It was a brick building. Go under the school building and put those potatoes out, and the schoolboys would go in there as they needed them in the lunchroom and pull those potatoes out for the cooks. Also, in the schools, sometimes the superintendent would set aside 1 or 2 days, and we would get apples. There were local apples, a lot of apples grown, and students would go in. Each class would set up in a location and peel apples, and the cooks in the lunchroom would process those apples and make like you could do a drying process to have, or you could make preserves. My mother used we used a lot of dried products during the winter. She'd like Daddy would pick peas, and she would dry those peas and go in and during the winter you would bring the peas in the night before you were going to use them and soak them in water, and then the next day she would cook the peas.
And so you call them field peas, or are they more like black-eyed pea?
They were field peas, but the Daddy's favorite was Crowder peas. They were sweet, and when they were fresh out of the garden, they were so sweet. Yeah.
And would you put seasoning meat in?
Yeah, we'd use meat, yeah, from pork. Daddy butchered hogs, and he would have plenty of that go in them.
So did you have refrigeration?
No, and our homes were cold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, did you all have an ice box?
No.
No.
Our home was cold. I mean, when I was born, it was a 2-room cabin, and then Daddy, when I was about 5, Daddy had a portable sawmill to come in and sawed a set of lumber, and he could exchange lumber, rough lumber for dressed, and he added 2 rooms onto the house, and but we had the heat was one open fireplace. My daddy was a fisherman. He was a farmer and a fisherman. And when the farm allowed, he would take me fishing. We would walk from our home over to Little River, the Savannah River, which was 3, 4, 5 miles, I guess, 5 miles probably. And we would, one favorite place was where the Dawn facility is now. This was before the lake, of course. There was an island in the Savannah River called Searles Island because of the Searles family that owned the land around. And it was a large island in the river, and when we would usually go fishing late in the afternoon, on an afternoon. By the time we got there, it was getting toward dark, and we would see if we could first find somebody's boat. If we did, we'd just take the chain loose, and we called them bateaus in that day, and we'd take the bateau, and usually it had a lot of water in it, and Daddy, he would bring along some kind of old can,
scoop the water out. Oh no!
And we'd put that old boat in the river, and we'd stretch 3 trot lines across the river. Okay. And you'd put set hooks on each.
Okay.
About every 2-3 feet.
Right.
You'd have them tied to the line.
Okay.
And you'd bait these hooks with on the way to our walk to the river. We would stop in a little stream and carry an old seine that Daddy would make out of an onion bag or something, and we'd catch minnows,
right?
And which would be red horses.
So you take the screen to catch the minnows.
Yeah, red horses and different kinds of little minnows, and we put them in a bucket and we'd take off to the river,
and bait the hooks with
we
the
bait
minnows.
with the minnows, and also we use earthworms.
Right.
And then also, if we got the trot lines out in time before dark, we would cut poles, just little poles, 6 feet or something, out of a little sapling trees, and we'd go down the bank and we'd put what we call set hooks. We'd try to get out 20 or 30 if we could. It'd just have a line, just stick them in the bank and bait them, and then we'd settle down and Daddy would talk and tell me stories. And sometimes we would sleep on the island had outcroppings of large stone, and we would carry an old quilt or something in our backpacks, and we'd spread that quilt out and lay back on that and you know, it gets cool at night in the river. Well, on that stone, it was warm from the day. So we would lay that quilt, and it would be warm, and I'd lay back on it, and Daddy would tell me about the stars and the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, and then he'd tell me stories over and over, and just different kinds of stories, history. And then Daddy would start fishing with a pole. Sometimes after we'd eat our sandwich that we brought with us, and he would fish it up in the night, and then depending on how much the fish were biting, we would try to work the lines every hour.
Okay.
And rebait them and take the fish off and bring them back. Sometimes you get a lot of fish.
I was going to say, with that setup, it seems like...
Catfish, blue cats, sand cats, eels. I dressed eels.
Okay.
That was my job, dress those eels. You dress them kind of like dressing a rabbit. You just put the nail, put the head through over a nail and just get that and peel it down. And I take the eel hides and by the way, that's a white meat, that eel. And
would you sell those?
No, we'd eat that.
Okay.
And I take the hides and dry the hides, and I'd make me a belt.
And again, recycling everything.
And,
you know, today they throw so much away. I keep telling them we used everything.
I used rabbit skins for a hat. I'd cure out those hides and make a hat look about like Daniel Boone, I guess. I didn't know who Daniel Boone was.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.